why trying harder quietly destroys your position. Trying harder is not neutral. The behavior is visible and legible as a signal of dependence, even when it is explained as diligence. The person increases speed, increases detail, increases availability, and adds concessions. They lengthen messages, add attachments, offer extras, and stay reachable at all hours. From inside, it feels like doing the necessary work. From outside, it reads as need, not strength. The pattern forms when outcomes are tied to perceived effort in early environments. Grades were contingent on more work. Praise followed extra credit and compliance. The carryover is automatic. When stakes rise, the person increases exertion because that lever once worked. It does not feel optional. It reads as the obvious move. The environment does not push back because it benefits from the surplus output. Trying harder reduces uncertainty for everyone except the one trying. It discloses private priorities, timelines, and fears through speed and repetition. It reveals what they are willing to do and what they are not willing to risk. It reveals how much access someone can have to their time. It shows where the threshold for frustration sits. It makes inference easy for observers and hard for the actor, because the actor is occupied with tasks. Under pressure, the person assumes a monotonic relationship between effort and outcome. That assumption is rarely tested, because they rarely stop doing more. They do not measure whether more moves anything that matters. They measure only their own activity. The loop locks. More resistance, more effort. More silence, more follow-up. More effort, more visible need. The observable variable is behavior, and the behavior tells the same story each time. They lose leverage and cannot get it back. The urge to justify effort is strong. The person tells themselves that details prove care. They tell themselves that quick replies signal professionalism. They believe being the first to respond secures their place. They believe that over-preparing eliminates risk. Each belief has a partial truth that keeps the chain intact. It feels rational because a small number of past outcomes reinforce it. The mechanism advances through small concessions. A quick favor to keep things moving. A discounted rate to close a gap. An extra call to reassure. A rushed turnaround to show commitment. These moves create a new baseline. What was surplus becomes the new minimal. What was considered a stretch becomes standard. The floor rises without announcement. The environment adapts without gratitude. From the inside, signals are misread. Silence is read as not enough yet. Boundary is read as a test to pass. Delay is read as a void to fill. Cooling interest is read as an objection to be handled. The person directs energy toward lowering barriers that were not barriers. They move faster inside a closed lane. They become busy inside a refusal. Respect falls and the room moves on. The act of trying harder now communicates that outcomes matter more to the actor than to anyone else. That is a market disclosure. It marks them as the party with more to lose. The other side recalculates risk and cost. They see a wide margin to push into because the actor is already paying it. The asymmetry grows without negotiation or conflict. The person trying harder pays for the difference with their time and standing. The social reading is simple. People who have options ration effort. People who lack options oversupply effort to protect access. By supplying too much effort, the person confirms the second category. This is not hidden. Each extra message, each urgent revision, each unnecessary follow-up is a minor broadcast about relative position. It is not dramatic. It is routine, and therefore accepted as true. At the same time, the person builds a case for themselves that feels honest. They say they care about quality. They say they honor their word. They say they are building trust. These statements are accurate in form and misleading in effect. What observers see is not quality or integrity. They see a person who will bend before they are asked to bend. The trying is also self-instruction. By repeatedly acting like someone with low leverage, the person starts to think of themselves that way. They expect to be tested. They expect to be last to be told. They expect to absorb inconvenience. These expectations make compliance faster and more precise. The cycle maintains itself without a decision. It is the obvious response to the state they have created. The chase marks them as replaceable. Intermittent reward deepens the trap. Occasionally, the extra effort appears to hit. A late-night push yields a yes. A rushed deck clears a meeting. A series of check-ins returns a response. The person stores these exceptions and ignores the base rate. They convert rare outcomes into proof that the pattern works. The memory of the win keeps the useless effort funded. The attention economy inside groups follows different math. Responsiveness is free to the recipient and costly to the sender. Extra detail saves others thinking at the cost of your time. Over-preparation saves others risk at the cost of your risk budget. The exchange is unpriced and therefore skewed. The person who tries harder carries the load that others are happy to drop. There is no need to ask for it. It arrives on time. Escalation is mistaken for influence. Volume is mistaken for weight. The actor assumes that showing up more times creates pull. It does not. It dilutes each instance of contact. It trains others to ignore signals from that source, because scarcity is absent. The more they try, the less their individual signals register, because signal-to-noise falls by their own hand. The same applies to apology and framing. Overqualification and hedging to avoid offense read as fear. Over-explaining reads as insecurity. A long justification reads as permission to request more. Relief at being allowed to continue reads as dependence. None of this is hostile. It is a plain reallocation of how others place the person. Inside the pattern, the person treats clarity as a problem to be solved by effort. If something is unclear, they add more documents. If a plan is not approved, they increase fidelity. If ownership is fuzzy, they take more tasks. If a boundary is set, they provide an alternative. The behavior seeks to reduce friction by absorbing it. The friction remains. The absorption defines them. Over time, this creates a predictable signature. When stakes rise, they accelerate. When interest cools, they chase. When terms harden, they concede. When access narrows, they force contact. Each reaction becomes a reflex that others can rely on. People stop needing to signal because they already know what will happen when they give minimal input. The trying person will move alone. The underlying error is not emotional. It is structural. The person confuses activity with leverage. They confuse speed with influence. They confuse detail with value. They confuse playing by rules with owning the terms. These confusions are not corrected by feedback, because feedback is rare when the system benefits. The system accepts the extra and keeps the person where they are. Conformity to unspoken expectations widens the gap. Once someone accepts a role as the one who tries harder, the surrounding network reconfigures around that. Requests route to them by default. Others plan around their availability. Deadlines assume their compliance. Meetings assume their attendance. It is logistically efficient to continue using them this way. Efficiency defeats fairness without debate. The person misreads this efficiency as trust or importance. They tell themselves they are central. They tell themselves they are relied upon. They call it being a team player. They call it being indispensable. The vocabulary conceals the cost. The designation fixes their status. Their own behavior makes the case that no one else needs to change. When new people enter, they observe the flat fact of who bends. They take that as the boundary of what is allowed. They learn quickly where enforcement lies. They offload risk where it is always accepted. The new pattern is actually an old one. The person who tries harder remains the sink for pressure and blame. This is not personal. This is process. The person senses slippage but interprets it incorrectly. They feel less heard and increase their pitch. They feel less respected and add proof of value. They feel less secure and propose more. Each time, the response confirms their position. The more they try to show they matter, the more they show they cannot withdraw. The display becomes evidence against them. The felt justification persists. It is difficult to accept that more effort communicates need more than it creates respect. It is difficult to accept that removing effort can increase weight. So the person rejects that premise and works harder. They explain to themselves that others are lazy. They explain that standards require sacrifice. The story protects self-image while abandoning position. In group hierarchies, people track who sets pace. They also track who adapts. Trying harder is a public record of adaptation. It offers a clean line separating pace setters from followers. Pace setters change terms and weight. Followers react. The ledger is not moral. It is evaluative. Once the ledger stabilizes, role movement stops. This mechanism is unremarkable because it matches everyday experience. The hardest worker on execution is not the person who decides the work. The most available contact is not the person with final say. The person who fills silence is not the person whose word closes the matter. These are known properties. Trying harder places someone into one of these known slots without argument. The pattern sustains even when it causes harm. The actor is measuring the wrong function. They track activity and at best short-term wins. They do not track how each extra builds a case against their standing. They do not track how much negotiation room they close off by broadcasting urgency. They do not track how much optionality they remove by setting precedents. Even when they notice, reversal is not straightforward. The new baseline becomes normalized in memory and expectation. Pulling back reads as decline, not recalibration. Delays read as disrespect, not balance. Withholding extras reads as petty, not normal. The person trying harder is held to the standard they built. There is no mechanism inside this dynamic that grants a reprieve. The pattern is now self-funding. Intermittent rewards remain possible. They are used to justify more effort. Conflicts remain rare because there is nothing to fight. The person has already agreed. The role is clear. The outputs are supplied. The only variable left is how much more they will give when pressure tightens again. Observers do not announce their update. They adjust it internally and move on. The person who tries harder is reframed. They are categorized as compliant, eager, and safe to burden. Their outputs are expected, not valued. Their willingness to stretch is used, not noted. The file on them becomes thin. Reliable, available, replaceable. Status drops and never fully returns. Leverage reallocates in quiet ways. Invitations that used to be direct are now forwarded late. Requests that used to include context now arrive as commands. The person is copied, not addressed. They are present without being considered. The others do not resist or attack. They just set terms with less explanation. Impressions congeal. When a person chases, they replace interest with availability. When they over-explain, they replace authority with justification. When they add extras, they replace standards with appeasement. The group does not debate this. It treats those behaviors as identity markers. Memory retains the markers and discards the reasons. Their ceiling lowers without a clear event. Opportunities divert to those who do not chase. The pace setters are looped earlier. They are given loose briefs and room to interpret. The complier is given instructions, deadlines, and checks. What is called trust is actually distance from control. Distance from control requires others to adjust around you. No one adjusts around the person who tries harder. The resource flow tells the story. Access routes to those who withhold their time. Discretion routes to those who do not justify. Leverage routes to those who do not overinvest in every ask. The trying person sits downstream, converting the mess into outputs. The conversion is appreciated in the way electricity is appreciated. It is assumed and questioned only when it fails. The trying person's words lose weight. A short statement from them invites follow-up and clarification requests. The same short statement from someone else is taken as final. The content can be identical. The source determines enforcement. This is not personal respect. It is positional gravity. They have less of it because their behavior demonstrated a willingness to compensate for others. Authority cracks and never fully heals. Prices change without discussion. In negotiation, their best price becomes the starting point. In scheduling, their earliest availability becomes default. In scope, their extras become included. In credit, their role becomes supporting. Each change sets up the next one. There is no need to ask, because precedent is already on the record. The person is tested in small, casual ways. A late request is sent to see if they still jump. A vague ask is floated to see if they fill the gaps. A last-minute change is introduced to see if they absorb the cost. The testing does not feel like testing from the other side. It feels like normal workflow. The aggregate is a stable forecast of future behavior. Relationship dynamics shift. Peers stop treating them as peers. Senior people treat them as staff regardless of title. Junior people learn they can bypass slow channels by going through them. External parties learn they can reopen closed matters if they pressure them. The person becomes a service. The title stays the same. The function does not. Access closes and stays closed for them. The calendar shows the shift. Meetings where decisions are set happen without them. Meetings where decisions are executed include them. Announcements reach them after they are public. When their name is used, it is to assign tasks, not to assign choices. This is not dramatic. It is a quiet regularity. Seen from outside, the outcome is predictable. Someone who signals urgency and need gets treated as optional. Someone who fills silence gets given more silence to fill. Someone who runs after attention teaches others to stay still. The system learns quickly because it is efficient to learn. It conserves effort by letting the person who tries harder carry the margin. Predictions stabilize. If a deadline is at risk, they will stay late. If a client is unhappy, they will agree to a make good. If a colleague is behind, they will cover. If a manager is indecisive, they will propose 3 options and ask for guidance. These moves keep operations smooth. They suppress volatility for everyone else. They place all volatility on themselves. The read of their character adjusts accordingly. Dependable becomes dependent. Diligent becomes desperate. Thorough becomes anxious. Available becomes unimportant. None of these labels are said out loud. They are enacted in how requests are sent and how credit is assigned. Compensation follows the same path. Raises are muted because the person's contribution is treated as baseline. Promotions are delayed because their slot is useful as is. Offers from outside are less common because their public activity signals low choice. When offers do arrive, they carry more work, not more leverage. The market expects them to be grateful. The market is not wrong. Reputation locks. People who have seen them chase keep that image. They recommend them for roles that match what they observed, not what the person wants. Introductions place them in networks where output is demanded and decisions are made elsewhere. Over time, they live inside the consequences of public record. They are known, but not in a way that helps them change lanes. Energy declines without benefit. Trying harder costs sleep, attention, and patience. It narrows focus to immediate requests and away from positioning. It produces visible effort that confirms their lower place. The result is fatigue without status. The visible exhaustion ratifies the same story. They are working under someone else's pace. When pushback does happen, it is discounted. A person who has conceded consistently does not reverse their image with one refusal. The refusal is seen as mood, not policy. The next time, the routing continues as before. People do not re-architect their workflows because of one moment. They follow the line that has kept things predictable. This predictability is why the consequences appear stable. There is no confrontation to mark a break. There is no formal demotion. There is no statement. The person just finds themselves at the same table, doing more to stay in the same seat. Others move in different ways. They are moved by others. Newcomers learn by watching. They see who is sought and who is summoned. They see who speaks briefly and is done. They see who speaks at length and is ignored. Without instruction, they copy the patterns that seem to work. The trying person becomes an example of what not to be, without anyone needing to say it. As the cycle extends, risk pools around them. They are the dependency that must not fail. They are kept in place by that risk. When they do fail, the group moves on quickly because it had already downgraded their authority. Recovery does not happen because there is nothing to recover to. The previous status was already converted into labor. In personal domains, the translation is direct. People who chase attention are granted less of it over time. People who over-message are answered later and with fewer words. People who offer more to keep contact see that contact thin. The other party reads the same signals as in work. Need is noted. Distance is rewarded. It repeats until one side stops. Across domains, this creates an identical profile. The person is reliable for tasks, pliant under pressure, easy to reach, and willing to do more. They do not set terms. They do not have to be convinced. They just have to be asked. The ask becomes larger each time. The gap between what they want and what they get remains constant. Eventually, the environment no longer remembers the earlier pattern. There is no credit for the early status they believed they had. There is only the current use case. If they exit, a role is filled by another person who will try harder. Nothing in the system breaks. Nothing in the system changes. The person's absence is a logistical problem, not a strategic one. From the outside, people stop expecting surprises from them. No one anticipates a difficult no. No one anticipates a boundary that holds. No one anticipates a withdrawal of effort. Plans incorporate their compliance as a known input. The planning becomes smoother. Their future narrows into a set of reactions. This is not punishment. It is allocation. Each person provides data through their behavior. The data sets their rank in the quiet order. The person who tries harder contributes the most data. The order accepts it and adjusts. The adjustment does not reverse on its own. The long-term view is stark. Influence consolidates elsewhere. Visibility centers around people who do less and mean more. The trying person remains in motion with no signal gain. Their actions confirm what observers already believe. Their options reduce faster than they notice. The outcome stays the same when the inputs stay the same. There is no final event that changes this. There is no meeting where the room decides to see them differently. There is no sudden credit. There is only the continued record of effort and the fixed interpretation that attaches to it. The path contains its own end. The ending was present when the trying began.